Okay. Well, welcome everybody. This is the May 2026 edition of Tech After Hours from the California School for the Blind. This is a monthly series that is presented by the Assistive Technology Department of the California School for the Blind in Fremont. We do this live, but our videos are also available on YouTube if you want to check them out at another time. My name is Shannon Stice. I'm one of the tech specialists at CSB, and I'm joined by Max Avendano and Allison Mello, who are the other tech specialists at CSB. Before we begin with our topic, which is note takers, I just want to remind everyone out there that we are here for you. We're available to, we can talk to you on the phone or Zoom if you have tech questions or need some kind of consultation. And we can also come to you. So we can travel, we can come to you anywhere in the state of California and work with you, work with students on your whatever tech needs you might have. So please feel free to reach out to us at CSB. Okay, tonight's topic is note takers. So we're going to talk about some of the different note takers and Braille displays that are available, and what's coming down the line, what's ahead in the future, and some thoughts about how to choose note takers and displays for your student. I think Allison is starting. Allison?
Hmm. Hi, everyone. So the first question we received was, at what age do you recommend students start to learn how to use the note taker? And one thing you will notice throughout us talking today is the theme of assessment, because although I wish that there was a one time fits all, one size fits all, in terms of technology, it all comes down to your assessment, and that's the comprehensive vision assessment. So, putting together that LMA, FEA, and tech assessment together into one whole package of your student. So, some things that I might take into consideration before recommending a Braille note taker is how much Braille do they know? Um, are How much of the code do they know? Are they in grade one, grade two? Can they read it as well as they can write it? Is their condition progressive? So are they learning Braille with the intention of maybe not using it right this second, but eventually down the line, could it become important? And then does a note taker truly meet the demands of their program? And some things we might keep in mind are, what are the apps and programs that their classmates are asked and required to use to complete assignments and daily tasks? And does the Braille note taker really actually let them do that and complete those alongside their sighted peers? And when we're thinking assessment and thinking about these questions, it's not just today's child, but 3 years from now, because not only do we have to think about like the teaching of them of the new piece of technology, but we also need to think about realistically, what are we going to get our districts to buy now or then, if we need to talk about buying technology in the future. If an assessment does point towards a note taker, I would say as early as possible. So one thing that Humanware has done is rebranded the Braille Note Touch Plus as my first note taker. And doesn't that just sound so cute and sound like it's already suggesting young? So if you're getting that kid on your caseload young and your assessment leads you towards a Braille note taker to complete some tasks, any tasks in their day, then getting it in their hands as early as possible. And then thinking also about math and thinking about a note taker that might support math skills and math classes, and an easy way for them to independently turn in math assignments. This might look like using the Braille Sense or the Braille note taker, or even getting a multi-line kind of Braille display note-taking hybrid, like the monarch. So thinking about where your student might end up in their math and science uh, career and curriculum. And I'm passing it over to Max.
Sounds great. Thank you, Allison. So the question that comes after is which device or devices do you recommend for students? And then there was a caveat. It said, keep in mind, most of the support staff cannot read Braille and need a screen. And so I want to parrot what Allison says about the dream for a one size fits all device or one size fits all solution. But unfortunately, because every student is so different and they have different needs, we won't necessarily be able to get there. And so, in thinking about this question, I think that generally speaking, a recommendation is made on assessments. So, you're looking at the student's learning media assessment, and then also with your ongoing assessment, whether formal or informal, you're gathering data on where the student is being successful and what things that they feel confident in, and so, and then also, where their areas of need are. So having this information is really going to inform where they're going to be going as far as a direction with technology. So students that are primary Braille readers and proficient Braille readers will likely be using screen readers with Braille displays or note takers. And then you can separate that set of students that are using Braille into functional or academic settings. And so then the recommendations change from there as well, whether they have a functional setting or a fully academic setting requires a completely different kind of system, I think. And so by and large, you can do a lot with note takers if the demand isn't super high, but as soon as you start getting into upper level academics, it becomes much more efficient to have a system that is more condensed and also more robust. And so I really like pushing Windows laptops or computers with Braille displays for that. As far as support staff not knowing Braille, I think that's something that can be or should be ideally worked out with administrators. As far as I know, professional development is supported by districts for the most part, or I would like to assume in all cases. And so if that for whatever reason is not feasible, there are tons of resources online on learning Braille, and then I also really like using my student as a teacher. If there's something that I know the student knows that I either forgot or feigned forgetting, so as to get more out of them, I think that's another really good way to get information and to learn as a support staff. Is making the teacher, I'm sorry, making the student the teacher, makes them feel really empowered, and you get the added benefit of getting the information that you didn't quite have at that time. Um, I don't know if that quite answers the question, but I would say that I push laptops, and then assessment is going to inform what devices students will use. And this next question is going to be answered by none other than our host, Shannon Stice.
All right, thanks, Max. The next question is, where do you begin with teaching a Braille note taker? So I can say from personal experience that it sometimes can be tempting to go right to internet stuff, doing Google searches and things like that. But there, Allison will talk a little more about this later on, but sometimes that can be tricky. And it's not the probably not the best way to start. So a beginning would be learning about the structure of the Braille note, just the physical structure, the body, where things are, where buttons and keys are, um, uh, where there are different ports and what they do, where you can plug things in, all that kind of stuff. And maybe involving just a little practice plugging things in and pressing the buttons because there's rocker switches and there's different kind of ports with different kinds of plugs. So giving your student a chance to kind of learn about those and giving them experience to with manipulating them can be really useful. And from there, I would recommend going to learning about methods of navigation. So the different kinds of the different ways that you can navigate on the Braille Maker that you use. So, the Braille noters that I'm familiar with have on the front of the device that do different things that are used for navigation. And then there are also key commands that you can enter with the keyboard. Like, for example, if you have a per dial or Braille taker means that students can learn to use certain instruments and kind of navigation. So learning about different ways you can navigate on the device is, I think a lot of time students may not be that familiar with how menus work, how menus are structured. Even as teachers, so maybe something that we give a lot of thought to, right? Because just kind of think about that. So some explicit instruction on how menus are set up on the device, menus and submenus and all that stuff. And this is a good opportunity to create kind of physical models. You can make Braille lists and you can show how the submenus are kind of indented, uh, um, they're indented further from the main menu subjects and things like that. So that's a good way for students to get a kind of a physical representation of the layout of menus. So making those kind of models for them, or having them make them themselves. Um, then creating documents. So that's, using the word processor. How to open a new document, how to write, using um, the cursor router buttons on the Braille display to move your cursor around, being able to identify where the cursor is. Depending on the device you're using, being able to turn off and on the cursor flashing settings. So the flashing cursor can sometimes be a lot easier for students to locate than one that's not flashing. So that's a good thing for students to learn and a teacher for you to do for your student. Um, the next thing would be saving documents. And again, there's the commands for saving and how to do that, but also this extends into places that you can save documents, the drives, external and internal drives and folders and all of that using kind of file explorer function on the device that you've chosen. These are all important skills for students, and also they're somewhat transferable to using a computer and other things that they might do down the road or be doing at the same time. And this is another opportunity for making some physical models. So you can with Braille paper and Braille, you can make uh, files and folders and show how files go into folders and folders hold things, and a file, how a file can be maybe a single page or more than that, and then the folder can hold it in other documents as well. And I'm sure you all as teachers have other ideas for how to do that. Then the last thing would be printing. Just learning how to print, because that's students are going to need to be able to um, either emboss or print out like ink print documents so that they can turn them in to their teachers, so their teachers can read them. I'm assuming their teachers don't read Braille. And then their students will also want to emboss things. They may want to emboss tactile images, and they may want to emboss documents for themselves so that they have a physical copy. So that's an important skill. So I think all of those are kind of those are the beginning lessons for a Braille, learning how to use a Braille note taker. And I would say the internet and those kinds of things can come later, but this is kind of the foundation. All right, the next question goes to Allison, and it's about the limitations to Braille note takers.
Yeah. So before we talk about the limitations, I'm going to give one caveat because nobody asked what are the advantages of Braille note takers, and I'm going to start with just saying the biggest advantage to a Braille note taker is it works right out of the box, essentially, in the sense that it's very low cognitive load for a Braille reading student. It's all kind of this locked environment of Keysoft that is meant for the device. So it's very simple to use, especially if you're sticking to just their simple suite of applications. Oops, I muted. Okay, now to move on to the um, limitations. So when we're establishing digital workflows, there can be some significant kind of lacks of efficiency in setting up that digital workflow. It could look like creating or saving documents in multiple different types of files. And since Keysoft File Manager is not cloud-based, right, it doesn't automatically update one version to another like a Google Doc would, or even a Word doc in Microsoft Exchange. So there might be multiple versions of a document floating around, especially as documents are passed between student and teacher and student and TBI. So there could be multiple versions of these same document floating around that could be confusing. Also, the My First Note Taker, formerly Braille Note Touch Plus, and the Braille Sense 6 both run on Android 7 and Android 8, respectively. That is the backbone operating system. So first of all, that means that it is running on a mobile type operating system. And 7 and 8, if you're not familiar with Android phones, that is many, 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 many years old, especially when given how often our phones update, right? So the OS is already outdated, and much of the hardware becomes outdated very quickly. So since it is a mobile operating system, that means that the applications that you're installing, such as like Google Docs or Drive, are the mobile versions. And I don't know about you, but operating simply in a mobile environment to do all of your homework or even thinking about in the professional sense is quite difficult because it's not necessarily built to handle that type of robust manipulation and opening and collaborating in multiple docs at one time or doing lots of file management tasks. It's not really built for that on our phones. So that it doesn't translate like a computer would onto a Braille note taker because it is running as if it is in a mobile environment. So many of those Google Suite of applications become incredibly buggy when you're using them because they are running on old OS and they are the only the mobile version, and many districts are Google Classroom or Google Suite based districts. Um, One thing that I have found with my time in outreach is that a lot of districts have a lot of permissions for getting on networks, and the note takers pose a lot of challenges for first setup with Wi-Fi and getting on the district networks. And our IT specialists that are on campuses, this is likely their first time with a note taker, so it could be an uphill kind of like battle, and a lot might be required of you in a space that feels a little bit unfamiliar when we're talking about IT and security permissions and getting that device uh, up and running for your student. And another thing to consider about is they are pretty expensive. And when you're not around, meaning you, the TVI, you're the expert on the device because it's a strictly vision field device. It's not a computer with a screen reader. At least at the end of the day, our IT teams know computers, and there's a screen that's familiar and a QWERTY keyboard that's familiar. So, our IT teams or teams, IEP teams in general, might be less able or less willing to support the device when the TVI is not there and something goes wrong. Um, but like I said, if we're doing kind of low lifting, low weight lifting, and just sticking in those key soft applications, it does pretty much work right out of the box, which is nice. And I'm going to pass the next question over to Max.
Sure thing. So the next question was, can a student go through college with just using a Braille note taker? And I just last week had a conversation with a woman who went through college with a Braille Sense 6. And I meant to ask her more specifically about her experience, but it didn't sound like it was seamless or that it was super, super easy. And so what I would say is with the current iteration of note takers, that it would be incredibly difficult to go through college with just a Braille note taker. I think that the note taker is phenomenal for exactly that, like taking notes and getting information quickly for lectures or other organizational tasks. I often think about how as you increase the intensity and the ask of a workload that you need a system that really works. And so I am going to reiterate what I said earlier. I really like a Windows-based laptop or computer with a Braille note taker as an answer for higher level academics, though it has been done and it will probably continue to be done. But I will say that the landscape of note takers is changing. And I'm not 100% caught up with all of them and all of the specific changes, but I know that the Braille Sense 7, for example, is going to be based on Android and it's going to be on Android 15, which is which is way better and much newer than the current iteration of the Braille Sense 6. And the Braille Note Evolve is on the Windows 11 platform, which is, of course, very different than the Android platform that it was on prior. It is way too soon for me to speak on them yet, but as a comparison, I think there really is none. They should be viable in terms of what they offer students. But that, that's just speculation on my part. I do think that they will have a lot of use. Um, However, what I will say is that support cannot be provided easily, then making sure that whatever device or whatever um, system a student decides to go, that it should at least come with that support. And people interact with Windows platforms all the time. Laptops and computers offer the visuals for other people to help. College campuses have libraries or computer labs. Assignments are on web portals and so many other things that, for me, just make the case for a Windows laptop and a Braille display that much stronger. But again, that's not to say that it cannot be done with Braille note takers. And of course, every student is different and can be successful or will be successful using different methods. This next question is going to be Shannon.
Thanks, Max. The next question is, what is going to take the place of the Braille Note, the Braille Note Touch? I think people have heard that it's maybe that it's obsolete. It's not going to be supported anymore. And Allison mentioned earlier how it's being kind of marketed now as my first note taker. So they're kind of, I want to say downgraded it. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's true that they are coming out with a new device called the Braille Note Evolve. And it is relative or related to what Max was just talking about. It is a Windows-based note taker. It also runs with the screen reader NVDA, but you can run other screen readers like JAWS on it too. So this is a Windows based device. Um, and it will eventually have a QWERTY version. So for people who prefer to use a QWERTY keyboard, and there are a lot of good reasons to do that, there will be a QWERTY version coming out in time. One of the difficulties, I guess you could say, is that I don't know if it's really a difficulty, but one of the things about it is that you need a Microsoft Exchange account to run it, which I guess really is not a big deal. Um, there is also the BrailleSense 7, which Max mentioned, which will be coming out with a new um, running on a newer version of Android. And it will also have a touchscreen display. So those are a couple of things that are coming out. The Evolve is not available for sale yet, I don't believe. We have a trial version at CSB. I haven't had a chance to really get to know it yet, but Max and Allison have been working with it a little bit. And so we're going to talk about that next. The question for the team, has anyone used the new Braille Note Evolve? And what impressions do we have? So Max or Allison?
Um, with the caveat that it's still in beta, it's not being shipped yet. Um, it um it it's a really awesome idea. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. What about you, Max?
I have been um, going through the forums. I have been trying to work on this device on my own time, and I've also introduced some students to it. And the students are super, super excited. They don't quite understand the device yet because we haven't had enough experience with it to actually teach it. But um, I like that you can still have a lot of the key soft things that students are really familiar with. And so it's not going to be a really jarring change from having the Braille Note Touch Plus to going to a completely new device with everything being different. The keyboard layout is still very familiar. All of the thumb keys are still there and then there's the addition of the special keys, which I think is really cool. Um, of course, as Allison said, is still in beta, so it's got a couple glitches and there are a lot of things to work through. But as Allison said, I think that it is a great idea. I think integrating Windows into the environment is going to be a good thing. Um, and it also has a lot of offerings for, as I mentioned before, as for the support that may be needed with learning a new device. And what I mean by that is that you can plug in peripherals to it. You can plug in a keyboard, a mouse, you can plug in a portable monitor, or just really any monitor through HDMI, and you have that same output that you would get from the old Braille Note style, like flip up the screen. It just requires a little bit more work. Those are, I think that's mainly what I've learned about the device. I'm excited to do some more stuff with it, specifically around math. Once I can figure out how exactly to do that, I think it's going to be a really fun device to talk about. And then the next question was for Allison.
Oh yeah. So, someone asked, I'm replacing my old Braille Note Touches. What is the best device to replace them with? Um, to which I say, I don't know. In the sense that, right, I don't think that I would ever just give a blanket replace everything with this one thing. I think it should go down to student need, what you're finding in your assessments, what you're finding in student daily tasks. Maybe maybe the note takers are being replaced because the move should really be to go to a Windows-based computing machine and a Braille display. Maybe the note takers are being replaced because they, weren't being used, and now, maybe we want to switch over to a Braille Note Sense or a Braille Sense because there was more math requirements, and the Braille Sense has become popular for students in math. So, um, just I want to exercise and make sure that everyone knows that theme of today is it all is based on the assessment. There's no one size fits all, no one device. It's always good to have all the tools in your toolbox because I wouldn't suggest somebody go replace their hammers with screwdrivers because they might need a hammer in the future too. So I don't this one was just based on the assessment. What are you finding that you need in your classrooms? And Max.
Yeah. So next question was, if I were to get a laptop with JAWS, which Braille display works best, and do you have recommendations for a laptop? I'm going to start with the first part of this question because I was talking to Allison about specificity not that long ago, and it turned into a long-winded conversation about things. So I think as far as Braille displays go, a Braille display is a Braille display. I think that whatever you are most comfortable with and your student is most comfortable with is going to work fine. I think that the Focus 40 and the Brailliant and the Mantis and the Chameleon are all fine products. They all do the same thing. They just happen to have a couple of features that differentiate them. We currently are big fans of the Brailliant, though we have way less of the Brailliant at CSB than we do the Focus 40. They're fine. They're both fine. When you are, and this is the part where I get to talk about specificity. In thinking about laptops, we often parrot that you need a lot of memory. You need 32 gigabytes of memory. And then that's a part of what is important for a computing device that is going to be using a screen reader, but you also have a couple of other factors to take into account. If your student is going to be using the visual display for whatever reason, then they probably want something that's better than the integrated graphics that comes with most computers. And so then you're thinking about a graphics card and what kind of graphics card is going to support the things that the student is going to do. And then in thinking about the longevity of the device, you want to make sure that it is a processor that's fairly current, that supports multi-threading because most visual tasks are going to take more threads. Whereas like you want latency with JAWS, which is mostly single threads. And so you get into this entire conversation about that. But the bottom line is think about memory, think about a processor that's fairly new, and think about what the goal of the device is. And if you need any advice on what exactly is going to serve you best, I find online forums with enthusiasts is probably the best because there is no agenda for the people posting there, as opposed to like going to Best Buy or Walmart or wherever, where salespeople are typically looking to upgrade you for the sake of bottom line or sales commissions or what have you. I personally have built a couple computers in my time, but I'm also not an expert in any way, shape, or form. But should you have some basic to intermediate questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at CSB, and if they can answer, one of us will find the answer for you. I want to make sure that I address this completely. Yeah. Yeah. Because then if I start talking about RAM and RAM numbers, it just gets not so fun. So next question.
Okay, the next question. How can teachers help determine the best Braille display for their student? So I think as we've mentioned a couple of times in this this episode of Tech After Hours. There's no one size fits all answer, and the best display for your student is going to be determined partly by the assessment that the vision assessment that's done. Um, Additionally, the different displays have different features, like Max mentioned. So, just as an example, the Brilliant has some basic note taker functions that allow you to read plain text and BRF files. So it has some very basic note taker functions. The Chameleon also has note taker functions that are a little more robust than that, but it has a small display, so it can be a good introductory device for younger students, especially. Um, and then the Focus 40 is great for connectivity. It can connect to multiple devices easily at the same time. So maybe a student needs to connect to their phone and their computer and a tablet all at the same time. So the Focus 40 is great for that. So they all have strengths in different areas. Additionally, you would want to be thinking about how much Braille is your student using, how much Braille is your student reading and writing, and how much might they be reading and writing in the future. So maybe they're just learning right now, and you anticipate that in a few years they'll be doing a lot more. Or they're maybe a young student in a early elementary grade, and you can see that, in upper elementary and middle school, they're going to have much greater needs. Or you may have a student that's not really doing a lot of Braille or is just doing very simple things in Braille. So those are all things that will go into determining what might be the best Braille display for your student. Um, yeah, so I don't think there's not one that's better for all students, like with all the note takers and other devices. So it's really going to come from your assessment and then looking at what the student needs now and what kind of needs you think they'll have in the future. And I think I covered that question. And is that our last question, guys?
It is.
Yeah,
Happy
I
summer
think it
break.
was.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Happy
stop
summer
the
break,
recording.
everyone.